Maybe you had a roof over your head, food on the table, parents who weren't violent, who didn't drink, who worked hard and kept things stable. And yet, something has always felt missing, not dramatically missing, not in a way you could point to and say, "This happened to me." Just quietly missing, like a room in your house that was always locked, and nobody ever talked about what was inside. If that resonates, this video might explain something you've been trying to put into words for a very long time. We're going to look at the signs of emotional neglect in childhood, the specific patterns that are easy to miss, because they're not about what happened to you, but about what never did. And more importantly, what those signs quietly turn into by the time you're an adult. In your relationships, your work, the way you talk to yourself, because most people who experienced this don't find out until their 30s or 40s, and even then, they struggle to name it. So let's name it. Before we get into the signs, I want to say something that took me a long time to understand about this topic. Emotional neglect is not about bad parents. It's not even always about absent parents. Some of the most emotionally neglected people grew up in homes that looked completely fine from the outside, structured, stable, even loving in certain ways. Their parents worked hard, kept the lights on, showed up to school events. But there was a part of the child, the inner world, the emotional world, that was never asked about, never validated, never given room to exist. When you cried, you were told you were too sensitive. When you were scared, you were told there was nothing to be afraid of. When you were proud of something, it passed without much notice. When you were struggling, you learned to handle it alone, because nobody was coming. And here's the thing that makes this so hard to recognize. It didn't feel like neglect. It just felt like life. It felt like you. That's the cruelest part of emotional neglect. It doesn't leave a visible mark. It just quietly teaches you that your inner world doesn't really matter. Sign 1. Your emotions were consistently minimized. In childhood, this looked like you came home upset about something, and the response was dismissal. "You're fine, stop being dramatic," or distraction, or silence. That told you this wasn't something the room had space for. What it becomes in adulthood, you minimize yourself before anyone else gets the chance. You apologize for being upset. You say, "I'm fine," before anyone even asks. You have feelings, strong ones, and then immediately talk yourself out of them. Sign 2, emotional hypervigilance. In childhood, this looked like a parent with unpredictable moods. Not explosive, just inconsistent. And your nervous system learned to constantly scan for signals. Is today a good day or a bad day? What it becomes in adulthood, you read every room before you walk into it. You're exhausted, not from what you do, but from the constant monitoring of everyone around you. Sign 3, hyper-independence. You learned early that asking for help came with a cost, a sigh, an eye roll, so you stopped asking. What it becomes in adulthood, asking for help feels physically uncomfortable. You handle everything alone. And when someone offers help, part of you wonders what they want in return. Sign 4, you feel empty, but you can't explain why. In childhood, this looked like an emotional quietness in the home. Not traumatic, just quiet. Your inner life was never really invited to the table, and over time, it learned to go quiet too. What it becomes in adulthood, a persistent sense that something is missing. You can achieve something significant and feel nothing. Sign 5. You don't know what you need. In childhood, nobody asked. Not once did someone sit with you and say, "What do you need right now?" What it becomes in adulthood, when someone who genuinely loves you asks, "What do you need from me?" You go blank. Not because the question is hard, because you genuinely don't know. Here's the thing about all 5 of these signs. None of them look like trauma from the outside. They look like personality, like being an introvert, or independent, or emotionally mature, or a bit closed off. Almost 1 in 5 adults experienced childhood emotional neglect, and the vast majority have no idea, because there's nothing to point to, no event, no villain, no dramatic story, just a childhood that was fine on the outside and lonely on the inside. The struggles you've been blaming on yourself, the difficulty asking for help, the emptiness, the hypervigilance, they are not character flaws. They are adaptations. Your child self made the only adjustments it knew how to make. That is not weakness. That is survival. So what do you do with this? The first thing, and this is genuinely the most important step, is simply to name it. Not to assign blame, but because the moment you can say, "What I experienced was emotional neglect," the narrative shifts from "there is something wrong with me" to "something was missing for me." That is not a small shift. The second thing is learning to notice your emotions in real time. What am I feeling right now? Where do I feel it in my body? This sounds simple. For people who grew up emotionally neglected, it is one of the hardest skills to rebuild because it was never built in the first place. And the third thing is practicing asking for what you need, starting small, with safe people. Healing from emotional neglect is not about fixing what's broken. It's about building what was never there. Every time you name a feeling instead of swallowing it, every time you ask for what you need, you are building new neural pathways. The brain can do this. You can do this. If you recognized yourself in any of those 5 signs, I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not with shame, but with a kind of clarity. The fact that you're here, watching a video like this, trying to understand yourself more honestly, that already is healing. Awareness is not the whole journey, but it is always where the journey starts. The next video covers something directly connected to this: why emotionally neglected adults struggle so much to receive love, even when it's right in front of them. I'll link it here. And if this video said something you've been trying to say for a long time, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do for someone else is hand them the language they've been missing.